Archives of the Western Reserve. We are here tonight to talk to three of the artists from About Body, About Face, which is the exhibition that's up right now in our gallery space at the Archives. And so first off, I'd like to welcome our artists. If you want to wave or say hi, you're not muted right now. Our artists tonight are Yvonne Palkowitsh, Davon Brantley, and Jacquees Jackson. And I'd also like to introduce my registrar at the Archives, Kelly Pontoni, who is our tech guru for these, as you know, for these Zoom events. So she's going to help us with some screen sharing. And Megan Elves, who is our manager of publicity and programming. Did I say that right? Marketing and programming.
Marketing, really close.
Marketing and programming, So welcome everybody. Before we get started, I'd just like to thank the founders who support the Archives, the voters of Cuyahoga County through Cuyahoga Arts and Culture, the Ohio Arts Council, the David E. Davis Art Foundation, the Gunn Foundation, the Cleveland Foundation, the Zufo Foundation, and all of our board members, our artist members, and our archived artists. And I'd like to give a special thanks out to those people who are watching tonight who may have supported us through Giving Tuesday through Facebook yesterday. Those donations were all matched by Facebook, and every little bit helps, and we really appreciate that. Thank you very much. So I'm going to turn it over to Megan now, and she's going to go through some housekeeping rules for Zoom and just talk to you a little bit about how the program tonight is going to work.
Great. Hi, everyone. Nice to have you here for the program. So just going to go over a little bit of Zoom. So I know that you are probably very, very familiar with Zoom at this point, but just a little bit of how our webinars work here. So first thing, there is a chat function. So the chat is actually an icon that looks like a little cartoon bubble at the bottom of your screen. Could be in a different position potentially if you're actually using a Mac interface or something different. But if you click on that, you have the potential to actually talk to the other attendees of the program, or you could actually talk to the panelists as well. The drop-down menu right there will dictate whether all panelists and attendees see it, or just all panelists, which will be us. So the next thing too is very important. It's the Q&A function. So the Q&A function, you're able to actually ask the artist questions. Just be sure to preface the question with the artist's name so we know who we're asking. And make sure to put the questions there. Sometimes we miss them in the chat. At the end of the presentation, we'll do our best to try to get through all the questions. Our apologies if we miss any or run out of time, but we usually do make it through. And then finally, we should have the active speaker view activated for you. So that should be putting the person who is speaking large and in charge in your screen. So if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat, and we'll be putting some information there, links when they're described by the artists. Outside of that, we'll answer all the questions at the end so we don't disrupt the presentations, and that should be everything. So I'm going to throw it back to Mindy Towsley, and she'll set up our first artist for the night.
Thanks, Megan. I just want to talk a little bit about the show for those of you who did not attend the reception or have not seen the show yet. I did curate the show. The artists were all selected from the Seen Unseen show. That show pointed out to us that there were a lot of regional figurative artists, and so it seemed natural that the theme of the show would be artists who use figurative representation in their work in some way. I purposely included a range of styles and materials, not to make it a show of just painting and photography. And from my point of view, as an artist and a curator, I find that more interesting. I think it pushed the limits of the expression while still maintaining a good balance to the show as a whole. And so including work in a variety of materials makes sense. And we do have 3 artists tonight who work in 3 different materials. Consequently, this exhibition does include handmade paper, drawing, painting, glass mosaic, digital photography, and mixed media. And there are recurring themes throughout the artwork that cross over the boundaries of just the materials and the process. And I think that's also very interesting. Each of these artists really pushes the boundaries. They're not just making work that is strictly technically representational. That's not really the focus of their work. It's beyond just the figure. It's what they're trying to say about the figure. So our first artist tonight that's going to talk with you is Yvonne Palkowitsh, and she's coming to us from Austin, Texas, which is kind of fabulous, and it's 68 degrees there, so we're all going to just be jealous of her for the rest of the night. Yvonne's work is gorgeous. I'm just going to say that it's really beautiful. She is a storyteller. She uses the figure in a narrative way. The meanings are not necessarily obvious, I think, to the viewer, and they have a lot of mystery in them. And to me, that's really part of the beauty of her work and part of my interest in her work. And she's very expressionistic, even though she's a photographer. I think she uses her tools of photography and also her computer in a very painterly way. And if you come see the show in person, you'll see that she is positioned next to a painter who actually does kind of the opposite in his painting than what she does in her photography. And I thought that was an interesting juxtaposition when we installed the show. So now I'd like to present Yvonne Palkowitsh, and she's going to show you some great stuff.
Can you hear me now? Okay, great. Thanks to everyone for allowing us to be with you tonight and share our love and our passions. My name is Yvonne Palkowitsh, and I am a conceptual photographer, digital photographer. I have been a creative my entire life. I am the cliche of being an artist from birth, and I drew, painted, and eventually picked up a camera and fell head over heels in love with photography. I have a love as well for portraiture, and so in my education and trying to learn photography, I wanted to do a little bit more with those images. I mean, portraiture, they have their own story. You see it in eyes, the mouth, the nose. However, I wanted to take those stories a little bit further. And I have a passion for women who have, I hate to say issues, but just life experiences, you know, and things are happening. And these are stories that have been told to me, stories I might overhear just sitting at a coffee shop. You hear a conversation, just a multitude of stories. And so I want to, in my work, try to create just a moment of something I've heard, and tell it in a way that is purposeful. So, you know, when Mindy suggested that it's not quite sure, the viewer isn't quite sure what that is, it's because it's someone else's story. And so my hope is that you will see elements in the images, and then you begin to see yourself in them as well. If you want to bring up the first image. Thank you. Now, with all of my images, I try to look at connections. I want to have an element of you know, being purposeful. I'm thinking about the colors. I'm thinking about the location, the posture of the subject. And so when I'm telling those stories, I am very deliberate with it. With Tin Can Goodbyes, this actually is an image that is so dear to me. You're not quite sure what her story is. Is she leaving the city and home, or and she's upset, or is she happy? So that's important to me, and I think you'll see that in all of my images. The facial expression it's always in between. You know, you're not sure if they're sad or if they're happy. They're in between. It's right at a change. You just don't know which way they're going to go with it. And with creating this image, stories of just leaving home, leaving behind certain aspects of your life and starting over. And I was very deliberate, even in the placement of her with her foot out of the frame. And I've had people ask about that, but I wanted to show that she's stepping into something unknown. And so that's the tipping point for that. You can forward, thank you. And with familiar connections. So like I said, I'm always going to have specific elements. So the connection, touch, the loving, the caringness. And this is one single individual, first off. So I've put her in a position of loving and caring for herself. I did several images similar to this, and you'll see that with Florabella, that's next. But I wanted to show the loving and caring of yourself, self-love. And with familiar, you're not quite sure if she's happy, you're not sure if she's sad. I love the connection, and that's also something you'll see in my work, the straightforward connections to the viewer. And I've always been intrigued by that with other artists, that the subject looking directly at the viewer. It's just, it's so moving to me. And so I want to put elements of that always in my work. And with familiar, she is, and I've told this story last time, but this was her 30th birthday, and I wanted to celebrate. And it was a coincidence because she was a model, and she just happened to say, "Hey, this is my birthday as well." And I was like, "Oh, this is wonderful. This is what I want to show. You know, you're moving forward in life, and what are you saying to yourself?" And next, thank you, Bella Flora, one of my lovelies. This as well, connections. I love the youthfulness of it as well. And even the placement, how she holds her hands, how she's staring directly at the viewer. Every part of that is deliberate. And if you could go through my camera and see the shots, you would think that initially looking at this image, you would think, okay, she's laid down and it's just a simple shot. Over and over, I need to see the hand, how it falls, how the head lays, the hair has to be perfectly placed. And so it's not so much for me fluid and flowing and coming from, the gut at this stage, at the shooting stage. It's more of precisely what I want, purpose. I'm purposeful in shooting so I can achieve the image that I have in my head. Ultimately, before me, I spoke about this last time, and this one is a celebration piece. Now, it is one of the images that is a little more intricate, and in that there were many, many, many photographs taken. This is a self-portrait, of course, and so I had no assistant in doing this, and so I just over and over, I probably 60 images, and using the digital platform, Photoshop, I was able to kind of mesh and tell this dynamic story that I'm celebrating the women before me. And you know, hopefully, I'm hoping the viewer will look at this image and begin to celebrate themselves, their own family, their own legacies. And it is, to me, it is a legacy piece. In this place, this is an image that I revisit every year. It is one that it shows the depression and turmoil that a person can be in, but you will see that there's hope in the image as well, with the light in the room. I do use water in many of my images. Unfortunately, I don't believe any of the images here, but I think that if you saw my other work on my website, you'll see water is used quite a bit. White, the color white is used almost throughout all of my images. There are just a few that are not, but I believe the last three, there's always a predominantly white clothing or something in the room. But this one is, to me, the viewer can determine whether it's a hopeful piece or it's one that it's just depressive and the person sitting in that depression. So it's real. This is one of those pieces that I like I said, revisit, because I want them to really make a decision. Next year, it could be a hopeful piece when you're feeling this way and feeling depressed this year. So proceed. Okay. I do have a sketchbook that I have had for years, so it is falling apart. And it's just a regular Walmart. I'm not sure where it came from, to be honest with you. But most of the images that I create are sketched quickly. So, for instance, I think you can see, let me know if you can see this one. This is...
It works when it's close.
Okay. So this is similar to Familiar and Bella Flora. It's just a basic sketch. I'm not really caring about being accurate. I'm just trying to document what I'm wanting to do and how I'm feeling. And so I'll put wording in the sketch. Sometimes I will be a little more deliberate, and I will write sentences to explain what I'm wanting to convey. And sometimes I do get a little more involved in the sketch, especially when I'm feeling the emotion. But it always starts with a sketch. And I carry even a smaller sketch pad with me at all times, because you never know when I'm going to hear a story and then I'm wanting to start figuring out location and colors and how am I going to convey the connection and really tell a truthful story. So I do that immediately. That is my first thought. It isn't an afterthought. So if you want to proceed to the image, I'm not sure for the video. I'm not sure if you have that one up. Oh,
I did. You might want to point it that you could show up the piece behind you, actually, if you want to.
okay. Okay, no, absolutely. The image behind me is guided. Thank you. It's guided, and this was in Seen Unseen last year, and it is one of my more recent images, but it was one where I was really exploring the connection and expanding on the story. And I'm challenging the viewer to tell me what they see. So I'm slightly moving and allowing the viewer to kind of form more of the story. And so I always look at this piece and I think, okay, I ask the question, is she in control of the planes, or is she being, almost swept away? And so, the responses, they're just all over the place, but I love that part about it. But I tell the stories with rich colors, and then of course those locations are so ambiguous, and sometimes they're actual locations, but most times they are from my imagination. So, which is the great part about it. So as far as my process, which I'm going to share a little bit about, keeping in mind the connections and me being purposeful. All of my images start with my photography. So let me go ahead. I'm going to share my screen. All right. Okay, can you see that? Oh, perfect, perfect. All right. So, and before I start, this is some behind the scenes footage. I try to get footage each time I venture out, but, and in this case, I did have a few people assisting me, but when I tell a story, I always like to tell the story with the wardrobe, the hair. I'm thinking about all aspects of the image before I even begin to put it into a computer. And so you'll see that she's barefoot. I can tell you this is Kansas winter. It was extremely cold that day, and I bless her heart for helping me out with this. So here we go. Okay, I knew exactly what I wanted. I knew the pose that I wanted. I wanted her to feel like she's leaping out. She's running, she's forceful. So I'm directing her. I'm trying to get that perfect pose. However, I may not get the perfect pose. So I will ask her, all right, I need you to put your foot up. I want to take a shot of just your hands. I just want this shot. I want that shot. I'll stop this. So this is the image I ultimately used. And looking at this, look at her face. Her face is to me, it's perfect. It's perfect. It's in between. It's almost like she has a smirk, but not quite. Is she unhappy? I don't know. I don't know. But I love that part about it. I can see her hands. I wanted to see the rope. And I wanted to see that she's squeezing that. I'm thinking about every little part of the image that I want to ultimately create. Her foot placement. But what I did love was I love the way her body was shaped, and I love the way the dress fell on her. So I also was wanting the rope to be visible. And I wanted to do it in shot if I could. So I was deliberate. I wanted the handles of it to be, of the rope to really stand out. And I knew that I wasn't getting that in the prior shot. And so I just took extra shots. And when I do that, I'm doing that in the same lighting, so it's not going to be an afterthought. Everything's going to be done at the shoot. And so now moving to this plane, the planes in the image, which was the fun part. The planes were constructed, model planes, by me. I've never done it before. And so it wasn't going to be perfect, but I figured, hey, I can fix it in Photoshop later, hopefully. But I did that a week prior and knew that I was going to, you know, and I was specific about the plane that I wanted. I wanted it to not convey necessarily a specific era. I didn't want a newer plane. I knew the type of plane I wanted. And believe me, it was very difficult to find this model plane. So I shot the plane in different angles in the light. I did find different locations. Wasn't happy with the location. So I knew that I would need to possibly insert or just create something out of nothing. So this is Kansas farmland in the winter. And I just drove down a back road and started to shoot, trying to get the same lighting, same type of day. And then of course, just a regular alley. I shoot skies all the time, sunrise, sunsets, and store them. You never know when you're going to need them. So here, you can see the layers. I'm not sure if you can see all of them to your right here, but these are all of the layers that I would use. And I try to label them. And just like a painter would, you know, you're going to have different layers and layers and layers in that painting. Excuse the dog. But I ultimately had, I believe it's around 33 layers, probably more. There were probably more because I compressed the image down, and then I will start over and start layering again. So the images are extremely large, can be printed extremely large because I'm stacking the images on top of each other over and over and over again. And so you can see here, this is where I am starting to lay out the location. And I don't care about, you know, how it looks at this point. I'm just trying to create what's in my head. So you'll see the road. I'm going to build out that road and just start layering images. I will correct some things. Here I'm adding the sky, and I'm cleaning up a little bit here. Now this is where I'm going to introduce the subject. Now I stop it here because I could have placed her anywhere, but like connection and being purposeful, I wanted her to stand out. I could have had her here. I could have had her further back, but there was just something in my spirit that told me I had to have her closer. We needed to have a connection, and knowing her facial expression and I just wanted to be more intimate with her. And so that's why I pulled her forward. I start to adjust slightly. And if you can see here, I actually, here, I will do this one again. That her foot changes here. And I didn't like that. So I began to change how her footing was. Excuse me, just a moment here. There we go. So I changed her footing, and I like that more. I enjoyed that. it felt good. So I added, now here I added her arm, and then I start to construct her because I needed other pieces. I wanted an arm that was, I don't know, it was solid, it was strong. So I took an arm from another image, and I didn't like the sleeve missing here. So I decided to add a sleeve here. And so I just start to build out the scene, add the planes, put emphasis on the rope. I needed it to be strong, show strength. I am changing here and adding some color, and I'm wanting her to pop a little bit more out of the scene and draw me in. So I'm putting light in behind her. And color is so important, but this is probably the part that I begin to pick up the brush and paint and start painting in the color. And that's, you'll see here, I'm painting a little bit more, I'm adding some lighting, making some adjustment layers, and just bringing in light, because light tells the story. As well as the dark spaces. But for me, the placement of light is so important, and for my images, it tells the story. It's a character, a subject in the image. So I start to adjust that and adjust more. I clean it up, and then I ultimately have an image that I hope I like, because I do step away from it for a couple of days and then come back to it. Sometimes I'll completely flip the image over, and she could have been facing the other direction. And sometimes that feels good to me. And so I'll keep that. But it's always a good day to step away and then come back and be completely satisfied and feel like I've told the story in a true, authentic way, and that it's conveying the emotions that I sketched out and that I wrote a week prior. So I'm going to stop sharing.
So that was fantastic, Yvonne. It's amazing to see all of the work that you do. I truly equate you with a painter as well as a photographer, because you have a good grasp of what light does, for sure, and that's the essence of photography. And I just want to say that one piece, you kind of have some Hopperesque things going on with the light in some of your work, and that's really nice to see. Thank you very much. So our next artist up is Jaquez P. Jackson, and this is going to be very different work than Yvonne's. Jaquez's work is delightful. I can't describe it any other way. It's delightful. He gives us real bodies with the bumps and the lumps and the genitals in some cases, and you don't often see an artist who's going to tackle full frontal nudity and male nudes, and so I appreciate that. And his work is just joyful. His handling of the medium of glass mosaic is masterful, in the same way that a good painting can be masterful, I think. His bodies express themselves through motion. Sometimes it's very subtle. It's just a little quirky uplift of a shoulder or a jutting out of a hip, but you certainly get the idea of what the pieces are trying to tell you. I think, sometimes when people describe work as whimsical, they use it in a negative way, but there is a sense of humor in this work also, and humor does us all good. And I don't think having a work that has a sense of humor makes it less serious. So I think you still need to take the work pretty seriously, but at the same time, there's an enjoyment level that is different in it. So welcome to the program, Jaquez, and I'm going to mute myself and turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mindy. And thank you Megan and Kelly. My name is Jaquez P. Jackson, and I began my art career just about 5 years ago. And it really came to a big decision point when my mother passed 3 years ago. So I had to decide, did I want to go back to the workforce, possibly working, a 12-hour-a-day job that paid for 8 hours, or continue with my art and make it a go. So I decided to continue with my art and make it a go. My art career really started back probably just after high school. In high school, I was actually, I had a professor who was a member of who was an archive member, George Roby. He was the art professor at my school at the time. And I did not take his class simply because I saw the work that the other students were doing on the wall. And I said, there's no way in the world I can do that. And at that particular time in my life, I didn't understand that there were different types of pencils. I only knew about a number 2 pencil. I did not know about graphite. I did not know about lead. I did not know about a 6B pencil. I didn't know any of those things. So I passed up the art courses and I went straight to what I was comfortable with, which is woodwork. So I went and studied woodwork, and that was a great thing for me. I love the smell of freshly cut wood and sawdust, and in creating with my hands and the vibration and just seeing the dust fly away from the piece that you're working on. I enjoyed that aspect of my work. So to me, before being a mosaic artist, I'm also a woodworking artist. So fast forward to making my decision to get into art on a full-time basis, I had to figure out something that was different. My philosophy is, nothing is new under the sun, but if you can do something that has been done and do it differently, you kind of create a new entity, a new art form. And so one of the things I decided was that the human body is something that all of us have, so we can all appreciate bodies in some shape, form, or fashion, whether it's the form that we're in or the form we're attracted to. We can all appreciate bodies. They keep us alive, really. And so my first couple, I did a couple initially, and they were inspired by the David. So when I first saw the David by Michelangelo, I saw him with one arm. One of the arms was broken off. So I said, there's my idea. I'll just do my bodies with no arms, and they will have no heads, and they will have no feet, but they will have genitals. And so that's where I started. The 2 pieces behind me are examples of the first set that I did. And so this would be a female, and this would be the male. And so you put them together and they're a nice little couple. And after completing that first set, the first set was done in green glass. And after I finished it, I realized that I have to pay attention to what colors mean, because the color green has significance. We talk about money, we call it money green. We talk about being green with nature and preserving the atmosphere. We talk about green with being naive or envious. So in that respect, that's when I learned that I could tell different stories, not only in the shapes of the body, but also in the colors. Green to me, it turned into one situation, whereas our bodies, African American bodies, were viewed as a value for producing crops during slavery. And so that was one way of looking at those green bodies. And another way was to look at those green bodies where, oh, they're vegan, they're totally healthy, they are eating right, and they're doing the right things for themselves. So from that beginning, that's when I learned that I had to pay attention to color with all of my pieces, and just that I could also tell stories. And it really depends on the person that's viewing the piece, what the story is, because we view pieces as we see them, not always as the artist intends. So that was the beginning of the storytelling. So I wanted to talk about one of the favorite pieces, and Minnie was talking about some of the whimsical and fun pieces. I created a piece called Studio 54. And this piece was started from the bottom, and I used a gold kind of glass with a pink grout, and you can see that there. And then I said, okay, let's have some fun. And I threw in the blue, you see there, because we all know what that blue means. And I turned and looked over my shoulder and I said, hey, I'm not using that rabbit for what I wanted to use the rabbit for, so he's going to get a rabbit vest with rhinestones around it. So, and the feel of the piece reminded me of Studio 54. Now, as a new artist, I was having a challenge, getting onto gallery walls. And so every now and again, there's an event that says, just bring your art, we'll put it on the walls, and it doesn't matter. And so I said, hey, I'm gonna do that. So I took this piece. And when I arrived, there was probably about 7 pieces on the wall. So I chose prime position. You could see it immediately as you walk through the door. The light would catch it perfectly. And I was happy with it. And the next day I brought another piece back because the place was so empty. I was just trying to help them out, trying to help them fill up the place. So I brought a second piece. Well, lo and behold, I come back a few days later and my piece was blocked. They had constructed what you could call sculpture, but it was really clear that it wasn't art. It was designed specifically to cover up this piece. And it was placed in such a way that in order to see my piece, you had to be within 2 feet of it. You couldn't see it from 5 feet away. You had to go behind this large, massive sculpture in order to see it. And so that was a moment of understanding, wow, people can take art, and this piece of art changed the whole mood of this particular exhibit. So not only was this piece covered, there became a plethora of genital pieces throughout the rest of the show. And I was amazed. I couldn't believe that this had happened. And, I didn't say anything about it at the time because I really didn't know who was putting on the show, and I didn't, I'm still trying to get in. You don't want to, rabble rouse, just getting started. So I let it slide. And so this piece is a special piece because of how it alone changed an entire show. But it also deals with color as well. At the top, this is black. in Black art, we can use black as a default color for the body or the face or the image. We can use black. However, when I started this piece, he was not a black male. And this black is actually his black turtleneck. But when I took it to that show, I think they may have seen something totally different than what I intended. So that's my little story about Mr. Studio 54. A question was asked at the opening reception, how do galleries, receive my art because it has, genitals. And so that's a great story, one of the great stories about how gallery spaces can react and have reacted. Sometimes the reaction is, well, we have a lot of children in the space, so, and so I take that to understand, okay, not necessarily, maybe I won't take the men, but I will definitely take the women that are dressed. And so from that point on, dealing with the genitals and trying to work around that, I started putting clothing on these people. And in doing so, I can tell more stories just based on the fabrics. So fabrics are made in such a way that you can tell which region of a nation that this fabric was made. So if you go to Africa, there's so many different regions in Africa, and there's so many different types of textiles created. And based on that textile, you can kind of pinpoint which area of Africa it was created. And that can be, the same with like plaid and Scotland, And so I include those things in pieces like Moon and Star, which is currently in the show, and pieces like Warrior's Heart. So those are the ways that I create stories. My male pieces that have clothing are a story of a woman who's visualizing this man through her X-ray vision. So she's looking at two things. She's looking at his heart, and she's looking at his other members. So, there was a time when the commercials always said, make sure you have a heart that's healthy enough to have sex. And I'm like, oh, what is life without a healthy heart? So that's what those pieces kind of represent. Showing on the screen now is two pieces. One is called The Sash, and that's the female image on the left. She's kind of a matriarch of all of the female pieces that I do. So she has on a very vibrant, festive gown. She's colored green, and as we talked about before, we can affix different meanings to different colors, so that green can represent that everybody comes to grandma, and so she's that of these larger pieces that I do. On the right is a piece called Biggie Smalls. Now Biggie Smalls, or Notorious B.I.G., he's one of rap's legends who was slain some years ago. And I just wanted to capture the look of the sweater that he's known for wearing, and also the red representing, the bloodshed that he endured that, eventually would take his life. But the piece also embodies the the gold and flashiness that often rappers have, and they show off. And again, I could include that his heart is like the sun shining bright.
Mm.
And that's the way I describe those two pieces. In this photo, we see Mr. Six Shooter. Mr. Six Shooter, he's one of those guys that's kind of the poor militiaman. He came forth. He has along his right side, he has 4 squares that are colored red and blue. I mean 6 squares. I'm sorry, that are colored red and blue, and that indicates that he has bullets for both Democrats and Republicans, because he's upset. He's really about preserving his country. If you look to the region where a person's heart would be, it gives you the sense that his heart is bleeding. He's bleeding out. In addition to his 6 shots, he's carrying a red sword as well as a blue dagger, so the fight will continue. And quite naturally, if he's going to storm the courthouse or whatever facility, he's scared. So, he loses some fluids, and you can see that in the yellow. And in the white there, you can see that he has soiled his pants sideways. I made that up. And so that's one of my favorite pieces, Six Shooter. And it was made with a variety of stained glass pieces, and that's a great testament to what we've just been through with our most recent president. Okay, these ladies, there's 2 ladies and 1 male. The lady to the right, Sister Red Dress, she's just, she's at the party. She's in a red dress. She's going to garner the attention. She's having a good time. I place her in the scene of a great jazz hall concert situation. We all know collectors who collect jazz scenes with horns and bass and drums, but we also know that musicians love people to dance to their music, and so that's where I envision her fitting into someone's collection. She's that person that's going to garner the attention and make the musicians proud that they've made her dance. High Split, she's on the far right. She's a woman who is what we call plus size, and she's on this night. So she's wearing a.
Quez, just to let you know, you're chopping up just a tiny bit, so we'll probably move to the next image soon, but just wanted to let you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she's wearing a skirt with an extremely high split on it, just to garner attention for that particular night. And this is Village Shoulders. Village Shoulders is a piece that was created with a myriad of stained glass. I was able to acquire some scraps. And so it was a really challenging piece to put together, because I just fit them together in a way that they could fit. And I think he's one of the most exquisite pieces in this show. I love Village Shoulders. So that's it.
Okay. Thanks, Jaquez.
You're welcome.
These pieces are all also pretty large, so do come into the gallery and see them. I'd say they're like 32 to 36 inches, which is a size that is new for Jaquez. He's getting bigger and a little more monumental in this work, and definitely all of the thought that goes into the symbolism. I think you can see that in the big pieces. So our next artist up is Yvonne Brantley. We've saved the youngest for the last. Yvonne works larger than life in the scale of his drawings. They're extremely masterful. Beyond his technical skill, there are many, many layers of meaning, just as there have been throughout the evening with all of our artists. There's emotional layers about what it is to be Black. There are some personal, emotional things in his work. Some of the themes in his work is very much shared with Amanda King's regarding art history and the way people of color are depicted within art history, as well as the way artists of color remain unseen in art history as it has been written in the past. Hopefully we will change that for the future. So I am going to give you Yvonne. He's in his studio. He's going to show us what he's been working on. Yvonne, we're very pleased to have you tonight.
Yay! Hello, everybody. My name is Yvonne Brantley, and I do a lot of work with what Mindy was saying about the Black body, about a lot of trauma that is involved with the Black body as well too, and a lot of like cultural taboos, with specific to my culture in general, but it could traverse outside of mine as well. But I wanted to, say hi. And I also have a surprise. I got a little wig for you guys tonight. And so I'm going to sit here with it on with you guys. And I'm going to talk about my work. So first, I want to just give you guys a brief summary on what I do. I talk about childhood trauma and how it kind of evolves as you grow into your adulthood. And so there's a lot of things that kind of get left unsaid, and it affects your relationships with your peers, family members, also like loving relationships as well too. And it's something that not a lot of people really talk about and not a lot of people want to touch on because it's such an uncomfortable topic. And so as I develop through my work, you'll hear a lot about my experiences with colorism, the sexualization of, myself amongst like different people, and also topics on masculinity, life, death. A lot of those topics are what I touch on, mainly because we see this in the Art History Museum or like the Cleveland Museum of Art and stuff. But sometimes with that imagery that is portrayed in art history, the Black body gets left out. And so for me, I do not want the Black body to get left out. I want my story, to be on those walls that are in the museum. I want to be able to connect with the artwork a little bit more and not see myself as some slave in the background or someone that's getting severely beat or catering to someone. I want to be in a more elevated position within art history. And so I make artwork that kind of pertains to that. And so I'm going to actually screen share a piece for you guys, just so that you can see what I have currently in the archives right now. Oh, that's a lot of pieces. There we go. Whoop. There we go. So this is one of the pieces called Dancing with Death that I have within the archives. And it's about my meditations on death and my experiences with death.
Yvonne, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I think we're seeing on site on our screens instead of Dancing with Death.
Wow, I don't know how to change that. One moment. Where'd it go? Okay, everybody sees on site, right? I'll just talk about that one. So with on site, Basically, you see this figure that is seated in an upright position. It pays homage to Renaissance art and figurative works, as well as the Baroque era of art. There is a lot of dramatic compositions within there, dramatic lightings, such as chiaroscuro. And I use that a lot within my artwork, mainly because a lot of the experiences and a lot of the topics that I am talking about do deserve that kind of dramatic light in there. So that is very visually pleasing to look at. It's not easy for you to walk away from it. It has a beautiful allure to it. And so I use that within my artwork in order to make people gravitate to the topic at hand so that they don't just pass it by. And with this piece specifically, I was talking about police brutality and how African Americans are, targeted within our society, and how the Black body has become kind of like something people want to pass up and not see. And so I specifically put a Black square behind the figure so that that Black body was present. It's unavoidable. And there's an allure to it with the individual being like more of a lighter skinned person, mainly because within art history, a lot of fair skinned individuals were mostly the highlights of art. And it was what people deemed as beauty, and what people liked seeing, which is, it has been carried on within this culture as well too, especially with colorism. Lighter skinned bodies are, very much sexualized. They're viewed as more appealing, and it just isn't right to me at all. And so I wanted people to question that bias, is the fact that you see a lighter toned body in this picture, and it gives you that, oh, this is a beautiful piece. It pays homage to the Renaissance, and I love it. But if there was a darker skinned figure within that position, would you still get that same viewpoint, or would you immediately go into a darker tone for the metaphor or symbolism that you're trying to get with the piece? And so I play on that bias a lot within my artwork, and you'll see that the figure does not have a face at all. I love working with silhouettes now, just so that people can put themselves within the artwork, and it's not just directed to one individual. Because a lot of with my artwork, or a lot of the negative things that have come with my artwork, is that some people say, well, you're doing self-portraits, so how am I supposed to relate to that? And so this was like me beating out that kind of dead horse of a subject that I always have to talk about with people. It's like, you don't see my face in this, it's just a silhouette. You are able to put yourself in there. And you see that there's a red dot around the figure's head as well too, which represents a halo. So this figure does become a saint to talk about those different topics. And it's red specifically because it pays a nod to looking down the barrel of a gun and having like a red dot pointed onto you, which a lot of African-American males and African-Americans in general have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. Even if it's not looking down the barrel of a gun, you become a target within our society to oppression, racism, sexism as well too. But yeah, it touches on a lot of those points, and that's what I want my artwork to do, is even though you see, myself represented in these figures, you still are able to pay attention to what I am talking about within my artwork. And so I'm gonna pass by that. Oop. How do I exit out of there? There we go. So I'm gonna stop that share. And I'm gonna share another piece for you guys, which is the Dancing with Death. So I'm gonna pull that up. Hopefully that is the right picture. But yeah, again, with Dancing with Death, it's about my meditations on, life and death, and me, having to walk down the street and be a little bit more aware of, where I'm going, what I'm doing, and how my day might get messed up in just a little bit of a second. And so I think about that, but I've also thought about how beautiful, death is in general. It brings new life to things. It brings awareness to a lot of things as well too. And it's a very complex idea because there's not just a one-way street to death. It is not just some horrific thing that we have to avoid at all. It's something where you can see the beauty in it and you can see the complexity of it. And so I have a realistic, drawn figure here, which uses a lot of elements of that silhouette that I was talking about in my last piece, where there's blacked out arms, there's blacked out hands, and then there's pieces of the figure that aren't even rendered in at all entirely. There's just a lot of different strips to what death is. And so this is my personification of what death would look like. I didn't want death to be some scary thing that people, come to and then approach and they're like, oh, I'm going to see a skeleton and he's going to have a scythe and blah, blah, blah. I wanted it to be something that you're able to approach and you're able to kind of like enjoy and have a discussion with. And that's what I want my artwork to do for the long run. I don't want people to get it at a face value. I want people to be able to kind of sit with it and think about what this figure is. And that's why I title them the way I title them, is because it gives like an extra little hint to what you should be thinking about with the piece. And so, yeah, those are like the two pieces that I have within the artist archives. There is a third piece, but I know I have like a shorter amount of time, so I don't want to go into a long thing about each one of them or anything. But I wanted to show you guys that and to introduce you to my studio practice. So I'm gonna stop sharing that little image there. And I'm gonna come back on with the wig here and show you guys basically how I get started with a lot of my pieces. So behind me, I have a new piece that I am working on. And as far as what this project is about, it's about a lot of the same things about the Black body being vilified and stuff. And so in order to beat that out, the opposition, or what I would like to call people who have opposing viewpoints, they basically have deemed a lot of people today as these angry, aggressive people that are lustful, they're lazy, they don't want to do anything but kind of yell and scream about equality and all of that, but they don't contribute to society, which is all untrue. And so I thought about how could I make that type of person very mad, and I thought about the fact that we have, the 7 deadly sins and all of that, and how, people can make a comparison with those to Black people, and a lot of different stories that are within like Greek myth and that we see on a day-to-day basis in media and stuff. And even stories that are in the Bible as well too. And how those can be seen as just outright negative. And so with this piece, right, I'm thinking about lust and greed and how those directly have a negative connotation to people when they think about them. And what I wanted this person to represent in here is that he does have a wound around his heart, and he wants to protect that. And he wants to protect, which it could be a metaphor for protecting his emotions and his emotional integrity and all of that. And he can have a lust for that, and he can be greedy about that. So he can be greedy about not wanting anyone to, hurt that fact about him. He wants to keep that close to his heart, and he gets like a rise out of having this emotion and stuff. And he's just going to be very protective about that. And so I've been thinking about a lot of different ways to kind of flip these notions on their head. And so he's a very protective person within this piece. And I'll show you like a little close-up view here with the screen share, so that you can get to see like the entire piece itself. Gonna enlarge that. There we go. And so this is not finished at all. I'm still working on a lot of things in here, but you can see He has a cloth over him, and he's just giving this gaze that is like, you better not come any closer because I'm already hurt already, and I will do anything I can to protect what is left of this heart that I have, or this wound that I have. So I don't want anyone to touch it or be near me and stuff. And I made it very angelic. And I also take a lot of references, you know, from the Renaissance and Baroque era, because like there's a lot of dramatic compositions in there. And I love, you know, making dramatic compositions out of the experiences I talk about. I look through family books and stuff, and I see how, you know, my family members are composed within a picture, and I take a lot of inspiration from that. And a lot of my color schemes come from like early 90s photographs and stuff. So I take a lot of elements and I kind of put them within that piece. So the sky is going to be like a really nice, like purplish, reddish sky. And then the water is going to be rendered even more as well too. So this is like a screen grab of like what it's looking like now. And I'm going to develop the cloth even further and all of the markings and all of that. But that's basically what I think about within my studio. And so I do a lot of writings when I'm starting off my pieces and stuff. And so like all of my character developments and stuff, which a lot of my characters are different parts of my psyche. And I kind of touch on those, even the shadow self, which is basically what you want to hide from the world. It's something that's within you that you don't want to really pay attention to. Like if you have like a disposition with being angry and all that stuff, and you try to hide that, like, you know that you have a bad temper. That's what a part of your shadow self would include, is that part of yourself. And so I don't try to hide any parts of my shadow self, any parts of my psyche at all. I kind of accepted them all. And I have written out like these little character schemes for them. And that's how they kind of translate into these pieces as well, because they still are a part of my psyche and what I'm experiencing within the world. And so I want to make sure that gets out, especially from where I have grown up, where expressing these types of emotions and expressing these type of traumas and all of that have been very taboo. I just want to make sure no one else has to feel like they deal with that at all. So I want them to see that, you know, if this dude can make, you know, a bunch of his artwork surrounded by emotions and all of that and talking about his experiences, then I can also have like some sort of modality for that as well too, whether it be writing, whether it be video work and all of that. And so that's like a lot of what I develop, is like I look up my art historical references. I look up, you know, my family history book. I write down how I want to develop a character and everything. So there's like literally pages of what I just saw you of me just talking about characters and writing them up and stuff. And I pay attention to body language as well too. So this figure is very hunched over. And a lot of my other characters have certain ways to where they exude their personalities or who they are. And I don't necessarily classify myself as a painter directly. I use it as a tool to push my narrative. I will classify myself as just, you know, a drawer, because I don't hear a lot of that at all. And I do a lot of drawings, I do a lot of paintings, and I use a lot of mixed media practices and stuff, but ultimately I use those different mediums as if I would use, you know, my drawing mediums as well too. So I still have like a drawing brain, but it just, in order to push it, I'll use paint and I'll use video work and all of that. And so here's a look at some of the, you know, kind of brushes that I'll use, which is a lot. There's a fan brush in here as well. You know, there's like a nice cut brush. I don't know the exact terminology of the brushes at all. I use them and I've adapted to them the way I needed to. like I said, I'm a drawer. So there's like a lot of different paint brushes that are my go-to, and I only use those. And I use a lot of like the same materials that a painter would use. Like I just got introduced to safflower oil, which is a lot better than linseed oil to me. I've been using that for like years, but safflower oil is a lot better for me now. So I use that. And there's a lot of different mediums that I use, like stand oil if I want to make a thicker, chunkier mark with the paint brush stroke. And yeah, and I sketch out a lot of things as well too. My pencil that I use, here it is. I have like a lot of different drafting pencils that I'll use throughout my studio space. And so I don't paint alla prima, which is just, you know, getting some paint, going directly onto the canvas, working wet on wet. I don't do that at all. I actually plan out a lot of my drawings or paintings by drawing onto the canvas and kind of mapping out where I want everything. And it's the same thing for a drawing as well too. Like these are highly detailed. And so I do sketch very lightly. And I'll just develop it with, if I'm making a large scale drawing, with charcoal. Charcoal is my preferred medium for drawings. And for painting, I usually just leave it with the drafting pencil being that underlying thing, and I'll go in and I'll do a huge wash of like red for like a bunch of different shadows. So this painting actually started off just all like crimson red, and I just developed it from there. But I'll block out everything just like kind of like a traditional painter. And yeah, it's very versatile with my work, I would say. And that's me kind of making a connection with dancing around that and making sure that I'm communicating with the painting. The painting is communicating with me. The drawing is communicating with me as well too. And I'm communicating back. And it's usually pretty quiet in my studio. As you can hear, there's nothing really going on. It usually stays like this. So I am literally like in the zone, zoning out and making sure that I'm creating a piece to the fullest capability that I can. And I will not stop working until I get tired. So that's usually how my studio practice goes. And I wanted to show you guys my palette as well too, because that's a very interesting thing to show. And so, my palette is super messy and looks like this. So it is a very like, it kind of is like very limited. There's not like a lot of extreme colors in there. As you can see, I have like Azurian crimson. It always messes me up. I can't say it. And I mix my own black. So I do not ever like go to the store and buy a Mars black and oil paint or anything. I actually mix my own with how CIA kind of taught me. I also graduated from the Cleveland Institute of Art. Yeah. But yeah, that's basically my practice and what I'm doing with my artwork. I hope you guys enjoyed that little presentation with me in a wig.
Thanks, Yvonne.
Hey.
You like the wig. It's pretty funny. Yep. Okay. I'm going to turn it over now to Meg. I know we have some questions there, and I think I'm going to put it on grid screen so that you can see everybody when questions are being answered. Gallery view. There we go. Okay.
Hello. Hi, everybody. So, oh my gosh, everyone's amazing today. And I want to make sure to take a moment to give a special shout out to Jaquez, who his power was knocked out in the middle of that giant storm last night. And he was able to put together his entire artist talk on the fly because he had process demos lined up. So Jaquez is a local art hero. Thank you for doing that. He literally is doing it from some other location. So just wanted to take a moment of appreciation there. So we have time for, I'm gonna at least hit one for each artist. And if we have time, we'll circle back. I want to make sure not to go too beyond 8:30 and respectful of people's time. So I'm going to start with Yvonne.
Yes.
We'll go in order there. And so everybody is in love with your process and your product and is just gobsmacked by especially the layers. So one of the questions we have is from Lauren Salmon, I believe Sammon, so my pronunciation might be off there. What is your process of using and manipulating light? Are you using mostly natural light when you're outside shooting, studio lights, or are you replicating that light with Photoshop when you're creating your final works?
Okay, so yes, it's natural light. I am a natural light shooter. However, when I bring in an element that I did not take the shot on location under that same atmosphere, then I will start to manipulate the light, and then and that's when it's important to really look at and feel the direction and of the lighting and keeping it consistent.
Yeah, it's funny. I know we were discussing earlier. So many people think that if you're a digital artist, that everything you're doing is created in Photoshop, and that is simply, as we saw, not the case with you. You were doing so much in-camera process. It's just gorgeous. Yes. So let me get one for Jaquez. Like I said, I'm going to do a little roulette here. I think Jaquez, again, thank you for just braving all adversity to be with us today.
No problem.
So I had a question. We had a question from, I believe it was from Patrick's. She wanted to know do you work exclusively in wood? Do you ever do woodworking without the mosaic pieces?
No, I do not work exclusively in wood. I do have other wood types of art that I create. I work with wood and resin. I do paint on canvas, but the woodwork that I do is usually embellished in a way that you wouldn't know that I'm a woodworker. I just enjoy that part of it, and I try to embellish the initial cuts and shapes that I create.
Oh, it's so beautiful to see that layering up too and the different pieces. Let me get. I'm going to do Devon next, real quick. So we had a question for you, Devon, which is, so first off, it was actually from Kimberly Chapman, and she said, "You're one of my favorite artists. Love your work. How therapeutic has the practice been for you?" So the process of processing that trauma. Yeah.
I would say it's been very therapeutic. Mainly because I have, done actual professional, like go to a therapist type of thing. But this was like my, even more intense version of kind of like communicating with myself and expressing my emotions and figuring out, who I am as a person and how to grow out of certain habits and stuff. So it's a very therapeutic thing for me.
Yeah. I think I know that there's so much art therapy, the idea of it, but I think that it seems to be incredibly useful for so much things. So, and it comes through in your work. So I'm going to probably since we're doing a round robin really quick, I'm just going to unmute everyone, all the artists. That way I won't have to play that game. So I'll pop one back over to Yvonne. So this one actually relates to Devon's work as well, which is that someone was wondering if you were influenced by Renaissance paintings. So it said the way bodies intertwine in the sumptuous folds of your clothing have a feel of Michelangelo's frescoes. So, and the way you use lighting creates such drama. The photos feel like Renaissance paintings. Is that an inspiration for you?
It is. It is. And I spent hours in Cleveland at the museum and looking at those paintings and really looking at the light. And so I drew elements from so many different artists, painters, photographers. Jennifer Thornton, she's a fantastic photographer out of Albuquerque, New Mexico, and just so I'm taking elements of things that I love and make me feel warm inside from many artists.
Love it. Weave it through. And so then, so for Jaquez, so I think you covered actually really well. It's like, did you have any run-ins with censorship? But another question was that, so in your Studio 54 piece, there was mixed media work, which was something I hadn't seen before with the rabbit fur. Is that something you intend to play with more, Jaquez, or is that sort of like a one-off? Like that's what you get the rabbit.
I think that you will see more of that. I'm really working with more types of glass and tile now. So that's really my next step in terms of the mosaics. But eventually I will get into a point where the bodies will be the framework and there may not be any glass, there may not be any tile, there may not be any mosaic. There will be something totally different. So you'll have a different type of art with the bodies as a frame.
Oh man, I can't wait to see that. That's going to be so interesting. Yeah, it's, the evolution is interesting. And I would love to see you someday write up the stories that accompany those big pieces because they're so involved and gorgeous too. Let me go over to Devon. We got one that was asking a lot. We had a couple of ones asking about what are, so actually this is a lovely, from one of our exhibiting artists. The way you draw from art history and transform it is phenomenal, brilliant thinking and work. Who inspires you? Writers, thinkers, artists, etc. What do you read? What are some of the things that go into the blender before they go on the canvas?
Oh yeah, so there's a lot of things that I like kind of take inspiration from, and a lot of people. I would say for more of like a painterly point of view, I have Amy Sherrold on my list, Kahindi Wiley, Kerry James Marshall, and I even like take from media as well too. So like people like Jordan Peele who are directing a lot of films that subvert, you know, that race narrative and all that stuff. And I've been watching Lovecraft Country a lot as well too, even though the season has ended. Been loving that whole series. I read a lot as well too. So like I have a lot of like Greek mythology books and like Roman. Right now I'm trying to finish the Metamorphoses of Ovid. And what other books do I have? There's just a lot of things that kind of happen in my studio where I take inspiration from, like the writings of like William Blake as well too, and how he paints as well. But yeah, it's just a lot of things. I feel like if I sat here and like explained a lot of them, we would just be here forever.
I'll come to the next one because like I want like a book list.
Yeah.
I'll hit you up after. And so perfect as we're watching up at 8:30, it is not shameless, appropriate self-promotion time. I'm really interested in, besides the show up at the Artist Archives, which will be up until January 16th, right? Yes, I remembered something from my own institution. Good job. I want to know where your work is either on display or might be on display in the future. So let's start with you, Yvonne. Where can we see more of your goodness?
Well, currently I am new to Austin, Texas, and so I'm taking a few months into the new year because I'm working on new pieces and I'm excited about them, and a series of work. I'm finalizing a series of work that I have been working on for 2 years, and so I'll be releasing that really soon. But in the meantime, as I release some of the images, you can see that on Facebook, my Facebook page, Yvonne Palkowitsh. So, and as well as my website, YvonnePalkowitsh.com. And I do put a few images in some events on Instagram, which is Yvonne Palkowitsh. So.
All right, dropped her link in. So we'll definitely have to check that out. And also if you want a good way to link to any of these artists on social media, we do have them hyperlinked on our social media page. So you don't have to remember how to spell Palkowitsh. You can just go to Artist Archives and find it. So, but you should, but you don't have to. So next up, Jaquez, where can we see more of your awesomeness? Now, future? Give us the deets.
Well, currently, you have one more day to check out my work at the Beechwood Community Center in Beechwood, Ohio. I have a great few pieces there, along with Siobhan Coleman. I'm also showing at Bay Arts, which is out in Bay Village. That show is called Mystique at Huntington Beach. And that show will be up through early January. And those are the main two places, other than art.
And also, I know Christy Kopaz is part of that show too, and Christy is part of our organization and our board, so more reasons to go to Bay, and it's a nice beach, so there's that. So, Yvonne, where are we going to see more of you? Oh, also, congratulations on your cover of Canvas magazine, sir.
Yay! Thank you.
In the office.
That was awesome. I have to get a copy. I haven't got one yet. But where you can see my work right now, I currently have a solo exhibition at May Halls in Lakewood, which ends December 6th. And we're doing appointment-based only thing. So if you have time before the show ends, get an appointment on there. But I also have a solo exhibition next year with Bay Arts. And it's going to be all new work. I'm actually creating a lot of these pieces that you see behind me specifically for that show. I will not be releasing some of the photos of the pieces though, but you know, they'll be new. And if you want to come in contact with more things that I'm doing, there's a lot, so I don't want to like hold up the time there, but you can follow me on Instagram or on Facebook. My Instagram is at Davon, DAVON .Brantley, BRANTLEY. And my website is dbrantleyart.com. Yes. Yeah.
Awesome. Oh, well, awesome. Well, I'm going to throw it back to Mindy, and man, I could ask you guys questions all day. So everybody else, just so you know that this is recorded. We will be putting it on the website within a week. So if you want to go back and pour over every detail, got you covered. So here's Mindy.
Thanks, Megan. I just want to thank all three of you again. I know it takes a lot of time. People don't really realize how much time it takes for us and for you to volunteer time to produce these things. So thank you very much for doing this for us. I hope everyone who's watching really appreciates it. It's been a fascinating evening listening to the three of you talk about your artwork. And I wish that we could all get together in person and kind of do a cafe thing and just like have artists talk to each other, because I think it would be a great idea. I don't know how we do that online for the next 6 months, but maybe something to think about for the future. So I'd like to remind everybody to tune in next week, same time as tonight, same bat time, same bat channel for all you people over the age of 60 like me and remember Batman on TV. It'll be next Wednesday at 7 o'clock. We have the remaining three artists, Lawrence Baker, Amanda King, and Tony Williams, who are part of the show. We would love to have Lysandra, but she just gave birth to a beautiful baby boy. And if you follow her on Facebook, you can see pictures of that. And that was, I think, just like a couple of days ago. So congratulations to Lysandra. But do come in the archives and see her work. We're open from Wednesday through Friday from 10 to 4 and Saturday from 12 to 4. And you do have to wear a mask when you come in. We're cleaning surfaces. We'll keep you safe while you're there. So thanks everybody for tuning in. And thanks again, Megan and Kelly, for all your hard work. And we're just going to say goodnight. Say goodnight, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.